The breaking point. The message arrived on what should have been a routine night at the Lunar Deep Space Monitoring Station. Dr. Maya Rodriguez sat before the quantum array, sipping her synthetic coffee while holographic data streams cascaded around her. After 15 years of listening to the cosmos, she had learned to distinguish the subtle patterns in the void, the whispers of distant stars, the echoes of ancient supernovae, and the rhythmic pulses of magnetars. This was different. The signal cut through the background noise like a scalpel, its pattern too precise to be natural. Maya set down her coffee, her dark eyes narrowing as she focused on the incoming transmission. The quantum array's processors were already breaking down its structure, a sophisticated encoding using universal mathematical constants as a base cipher. "Computer, archive, and analyze," she commanded, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "Priority level alpha." The signal's source made her pause. It originated from the Velexi Empire, an advanced civilization that had long considered humanity barely worth acknowledging. The Velexi, with their mastery of genetic engineering and biological technology, had visited Earth exactly once, 3 decades ago. They had taken one look at humanity's crude DNA structure and declared them an evolutionary dead end. Now they were broadcasting on all frequencies, their message repeating in increasingly desperate patterns. Maya's translation software finally decoded the content, and her breath caught in her throat. "Help," the message read. "The archive is failing. The pattern breaks. Help us." She immediately initiated contact with Earth's Xenological Response Division. Within minutes, her supervisor's hologram materialized beside her workstation. Dr. James Chen, his silver hair gleaming in the station's dim light, studied the decoded transmission with growing concern. The Velexi asking for help. He shook his head in disbelief. They consider their genetic technology to be nearly divine. Something must have gone catastrophically wrong. "Sir," Maya leaned forward, highlighting specific patterns in the transmission. "These data packets contain biological information. Their genetic archives, the basis of their entire civilization, are experiencing some kind of cascade failure." The Velexi had built their society on the perfection of genetic code. Their cities were grown, not built, using engineered organisms that could reshape matter at the molecular level. Their computers were living things. Their ships were biological constructs that traversed space using engineered photosynthesis. If their archives were failing, their entire civilization was at risk. "Assemble a response team," Chen ordered. "You'll lead the Xenobiology division. I want solutions ready before we respond." Maya worked through the lunar night, analyzing the biological data embedded in the Velexi transmission. What she found horrified her, a plague, but unlike anything in human medical records. It wasn't attacking the Velexi themselves. It was corrupting their biological technology. Their living cities were dying. Their ships were going blind, and their vast genetic archives were degrading faster than they could be copied. When the response team made contact with the Velexi High Council, Maya expected gratitude, or at least diplomatic courtesy. Instead, she found herself facing a wall of thinly veiled contempt. "We appreciate Earth's concern," High Counselor Vex Terry said, his crystalline skin refracting light in patterns that indicated barely contained disdain. "But we fail to see how a species that hasn't even mastered its own genome could assist us." Maya bit back her frustration. "Counselor, the data you transmitted shows a systemic failure in your genetic architecture. We have experience with similar. Vex Terry interrupted. "Your species still dies of natural causes. You allow random chance to dictate your offspring's traits. You haven't even eliminated your susceptibility to radiation. We engineered solutions to these problems millennia ago." And yet, Maya replied carefully, "We're not the ones facing a civilization-ending crisis." The chamber fell silent. Other council members shifted uncomfortably, their crystalline forms catching the light in anxious patterns. Maya noticed one in particular, a younger Velexi whose skin bore the green tinge of a scientist's caste. studying her with unexpected intensity. "The human speaks truth," the green-tinged Velexi said, stepping forward. "I am Kirax, lead researcher of archive preservation. Our attempts to contain the plague have failed. It adapts faster than we can respond, almost as if—" "Silence," Vexteri commanded. "We will not display our weakness before lesser beings." But Maya had caught the hesitation in Kirax's voice. "Almost as if what?" she pressed. "Almost as if it knows our methods," Kirax finished quietly. "Almost as if it was designed to counter every advantage our perfect biology provides." The implications hung in the air like a thundercloud. Maya watched the council members' skin patterns shift from disdain to fear. They had engineered themselves into genetic perfection, eliminating what they saw as flaws and weaknesses. In doing so, they had also engineered themselves into uniformity, and given their enemy a single point of failure to target. "The offer of Earth's assistance stands," Maya said into the tense silence. "Our primitive biology might provide perspectives your advanced science has overlooked. Sometimes, Counselor, imperfection has its advantages." She could see the war between pride and desperation playing out in their crystalline features. In the end, desperation won, but barely. The Council agreed to allow a small human team to study the plague, though they made it clear this was merely a diplomatic courtesy. As Maya prepared her team for departure, she received an encrypted transmission from Kirax. The message was brief but confirmed her worst fears. The plague was spreading faster than the Velexi would publicly admit. They had weeks at most before their biological technology began to fail completely. Humanity's first real chance to prove itself to the galaxy would come not through military might or technological advancement, but through the very imperfections the Velexi despised. Maya just hoped they could swallow their pride before it was too late. As her ship prepared for departure, she studied the latest data from the Velexi homeworld. Their living cities were dimming, their biological machines failing one by one. The plague was accelerating, and with it, the clock was ticking on an entire civilization. Maya had a feeling the galaxy was about to learn an important lesson about the value of imperfection, assuming the Velexi could survive long enough to learn it. Unlikely allies. The Velexi capital city was dying. Maya watched from her laboratory window as sections of the once luminescent buildings gradually darkened, like stars winking out at dawn. The living architecture that had maintained itself for millennia was succumbing to the plague, piece by piece. Her temporary lab, housed in what the Velexi considered a primitive structure of inert materials, had become an island of stability in a crumbling metropolis. The irony wasn't lost on her or her team. "Another section of the archive went dark last night," Kirax announced, entering the lab. The Velexi scientists' crystalline skin had dulled over the past week, stress manifesting in its lattice structure. "We managed to transfer most of the data to quantum storage, but we're losing our biological processing capacity faster than we can adapt." Maya nodded, studying the latest test results floating in her holographic display. "The plague is evolving. Each time your systems develop a countermeasure, it mutates to overcome it, almost as if it knows what we're going to do before we do it," Kirax finished. Their minds had started working in parallel over the past few days, human intuition complementing Velexi precision. "That's what I've been trying to tell the Council. This isn't a natural phenomenon." Maya pulled up a new set of data, comparing plague samples from different locations. "These mutation patterns are too precise, too targeted. Someone engineered this." "Impossible," a new voice declared. High Counselor Vexteri strode into the lab, his crystalline form still maintaining its proud luminescence through sheer force of will. "No species in known space possesses genetic engineering capability superior to ours." "That's exactly the problem," Maya said, turning to face him. "The plague doesn't just counter your current defenses, it anticipates your responses. It's using your own genetic engineering principles against you." The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Kirax's skin patterns shifted rapidly, a sign of intense calculation. The breach in the deep archives, she whispered. 3 stellar cycles ago. We dismissed it as a data corruption, because we couldn't imagine anyone penetrating our security. Terry finished, his pride finally cracking. Someone stole our research, our methods, our fail-safes, and turned them into a weapon, Maya concluded. She gestured at her display, where a new alert was flashing. But that's not the worst part. The plague isn't contained to your biological technology anymore. It's starting to affect non-Velexi systems. The news hit like a physical blow. Terry's luminescence dimmed visibly, while Kirex's skin patterns froze in shock. The Velexi had seeded their biological technology throughout this sector of space, establishing trade relationships and technological dependencies with dozens of species. How long? Terry demanded. At current mutation rates. Maya pulled up a simulation. The plague will reach critical adaptation within 2 weeks. Once that happens, it could affect any biological system it encounters, including living beings. We need to warn everyone, Kirex said, moving toward the communications terminal. No. Terry's command cracked like lightning. If word of our vulnerability spreads, then what? Maya challenged, her patience finally breaking. You'll lose face. Your reputation for perfection will be tarnished. Billions could die while you worry about saving your pride. The lab fell silent. Maya realized she had just committed a serious diplomatic breach, but she couldn't bring herself to care. She'd spent a week watching the Velexi's pride hamper their response to the crisis, and now that same pride threatened the entire sector. To her surprise, it was Kirex who broke the silence. She's right. Our pursuit of perfection made us predictable. Our pride made us vulnerable. And now that same pride threatens not just our civilization, but all those who depended on us. Terry's form shifted through several color patterns before settling into a deep, resigned blue. What do you propose? We need help, Maya said simply. Not just from Earth, but from everyone. Each species in this sector has developed their own biological technologies, their own approaches to genetic engineering. The plague was designed to counter Velexi methods, but it might not be prepared for other perspectives. The Zentary's quantum biological computing, Kirex mused, catching on. The Relax's photosynthetic drives, even Earth's primitive approach to medicine. Different approaches mean different vulnerabilities, Maya confirmed, but more importantly, different strengths. We need them all. Terry was silent for a long moment, his crystalline form refracting light in complex patterns as he processed the implications. Finally, he spoke. The Velexi Empire has not asked for help since our ascension to the stars. To do so now, to admit our vulnerability to those we once dismissed, might be the only way to save not just your people, but everyone affected by this plague. Maya finished gently. The High Counselor's form shifted to a color she had never seen before, perhaps the Velexi equivalent of a rueful smile. Dr. Rodriguez, when we first encountered your species, we dismissed you as primitive because you embraced imperfection. Now I wonder if that makes you the most advanced among us. Not advanced, Maya corrected, just different. And right now, different is exactly what we need. As if to emphasize her point, another section of the city went dark outside her window. The plague was accelerating, breaking down the very foundations of Velexi civilization. But in that darkness, Maya saw hope. Sometimes, the greatest strength came not from achieving perfection, but from learning to adapt when perfection failed. Kirex moved to stand beside her at the window, their crystalline form reflecting the fading light of the dying city. We should begin immediately. I have contacts among the Zentari scientists. No, Terry interrupted, but his tone had changed. This must come from the Council itself. We will send out a sector-wide alert, acknowledging the full scope of the crisis. He paused, his form flickering with what might have been amusement. Perhaps it's time the galaxy learned that even the Velexi can learn from others. As Maya watched the High Counselor leave to convene an emergency session, She felt a subtle shift in the air, the first crack in centuries of isolation and pride. The plague might have been engineered to exploit the Valexi's perfection, but in doing so, it had forced them to recognize the strength and diversity. Now they just had to hope that recognition hadn't come too late. The human element. The Grand Assembly Chamber of the Valexi High Council had never hosted such a diverse gathering. Representatives from 23 spacefaring civilizations filled the crystalline hall, their varied forms creating a living tapestry of evolutionary paths. Maya stood at the central podium, keenly aware that she represented not just Earth, but a radical new approach to fighting the plague. "The genetic analysis is conclusive," she announced, projecting the latest data into the chamber's holographic space. "The plague adapts by predicting genetic responses based on established engineering principles. It's not just attacking your systems, it's learning from them." A Zentari quantum biologist, their consciousness distributed across a network of crystalline nodes, pulsed with concern. "Our preliminary models suggest the plague has already begun incorporating Valexi genetic patterns into its structure. At current progression rates, it will breach containment within days. Then we must strike back with overwhelming force," declared the Krelax ambassador, her photosynthetic membrane glowing with aggressive energy. "A combined assault using all our most advanced bioweapons would only give it more patterns to learn from," Maya interrupted. "We need to stop thinking like advanced civilizations. We need to think primitive." The chamber erupted in multilingual confusion. Kirax, standing beside Maya, raised her crystalline form to its full height. "Please, explain your reasoning, Dr. Rodriguez." Maya gestured, and new data filled the air around them. "Every species represented here has spent centuries perfecting their biological technology, making it more efficient, more precise. But in doing so, you've all followed similar principles, the same ones the plague was designed to counter." She brought up an image that made several delegates recoil, a microscopic view of human gut bacteria. "This is what saved my first test subject. Not advanced genetic engineering, but the chaotic, unpredictable ecosystem we all carry inside us." The Zentari's nodes pulsed with realization. The human microbiome. It's completely unstructured, following no established engineering principles. "Exactly," Maya confirmed. "When I exposed a sample of human gut bacteria to the plague, it couldn't predict how they would respond because they don't follow any logical pattern. They just adapt, messily, imperfectly, but they survive." Kirax's form shimmered with excitement. The plague was designed to counter perfection, not chaos. It expects precise, engineered responses. But human biology is anything but precise, Maya finished. "We're walking ecosystems of competing organisms, filled with redundancies and inefficiencies that should have been eliminated by evolution. Yet those very inefficiencies might be our greatest strength." The chamber had grown quiet as the implications sank in. The Relax ambassador's membrane had shifted to a thoughtful shade of blue. "You propose we fight this weapon of perfect engineering with imperfection. I propose we fight it with diversity," Maya corrected. "Not just human diversity, but the combined chaotic potential of all our species' original biological systems, before they were engineered for perfection." A ripple of uncomfortable recognition passed through the assembly. Every species present had modified their biology over centuries of advancement, seeking to eliminate what they saw as evolutionary flaws. The Valexi had simply taken it further than most. "You're suggesting we deliberately devolve our systems." A Valexi council member's voice dripped with horror. "I'm suggesting we remember what we gained by evolving in the first place," Maya countered. She nodded to Kirax, who projected a new set of data. "Working together, we've identified remnant genetic patterns in every species present, evolutionary holdovers that your advancement programs never fully eliminated. They're not efficient. They're not perfect. But they might be exactly what we need." The chamber erupted in debate, multiple species arguing in a cascade of languages. Maya waited, watching the interplay of ideas and objections. She caught fragments of conversation. The Zentari discussing the integration of quantum randomness, the relax considering the reactivation of dormant photosynthetic pathways, even the Velexi cautiously examining their own ancestral genetic archives. Kirax stepped forward, her crystalline form reflecting the chamber's light in complex patterns. What Dr. Rodriguez proposes is more than a cure. It's an evolution in how we think about biological advancement. The plague exploits our pursuit of perfection, so we must embrace imperfection as a strength. My team has prepared detailed proposals, Maya continued, sensing the chamber's mood shifting. We'll need genetic samples from every species present, focusing on your most primitive, least engineered biological systems. We'll combine these with human gut bacteria and other chaotic biological elements to create something the plague can't predict. A truly random response. The Zentari's nodes pulsed in unified agreement. The mathematical models support this approach. Chaos as a defense against perfect prediction. One by one, the representatives signaled their assent. Even the Velexi council members, their pride finally giving way to pragmatism, agreed to open their ancestral genetic archives. The chamber hummed with a new energy, not the precise, engineered harmony it was designed for, but something wilder, more primal. As the assembly broke into working groups, Maya felt Kirax's presence beside her. The Velexi scientists' form had taken on a new pattern, one that seemed to combine the precision of their engineered biology with something older, more natural. You've given us more than a potential cure, Kirax said softly. You've shown us that what we considered primitive might be our salvation, that the flaws we sought to eliminate might be the very things that ensure our survival. Maya smiled, watching the diverse gathering of species begin their unprecedented collaboration. Sometimes the best way forward is to remember where we came from. Every species here achieved spaceflight not because they were perfect, but because they were adaptable. Outside the chamber, through its crystalline walls, she could see the darkening city, a monument to the price of pursuing perfection. But in here, in this chaotic assembly of imperfect beings working together, she saw something far more valuable. Hope, born not from flawless engineering, but from the beautiful unpredictability of life itself. Race against time. Maya's laboratory had transformed into an unprecedented fusion of technologies. Zentari quantum processors interfaced with relax photosynthetic arrays, while Velexi biocomputers analyzed streams of genetic data. At the center of it all sat a sealed container holding what might be the galaxy's most valuable substance, a sample of human gut bacteria. The plague has breached the quarantine on Outpost 7, Kirax announced, her crystalline form projecting the latest data. 3 more systems have gone dark. Maya studied the infection patterns spreading across the sector map. The plague was learning, adapting, becoming more aggressive with each system it consumed. Their time was running out. Status of the prototype, she asked, turning to the Zentari collective monitoring the main synthesis chamber. Their crystalline nodes pulsed with measured concern. The integration is unstable. Combining such disparate biological systems defies conventional parameters. Good, Maya replied, surprising them. Conventional is exactly what we need to avoid. The prototype was their first attempt at combining the chaotic adaptability of human gut bacteria with elements from 24 other species' primitive biological systems. The result was something entirely new, a biological soup of competing organisms that followed no predictable pattern. An alarm blared through the facility. Maya rushed to the main display as new data poured in. The plague had just adapted again, breaking through the Relax's latest containment measures with frightening speed. It's accelerating, Kirax observed, her voice tight with tension. The plague's learning curve is exceeding our projections. Maya made a decision. We need to test the prototype now. But the integration cycle isn't complete, the Zentari protested. The stability matrices haven't. Stability is our enemy, Maya cut in. The more ordered we make it, the easier it becomes for the plague to predict and counter. Upload the current version to the test system. The assembled scientists watched as Maya transferred their chaotic creation into a sealed testing chamber containing active plague samples. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the monitoring systems exploded with activity. The plague attacked the prototype immediately, attempting to analyze and break down its structure. But there was no structure to break down. The combined biological elements responded in completely unpredictable ways, some dying off while others thrived, mutating and adapting in patterns that defy prediction. "It's working," Kirax whispered, her form brightening with hope. The plague can't establish a baseline pattern to exploit. But their victory was short-lived. New alerts filled the screens as the plague began to adapt, trying to counter their chaotic creation. Maya watched the battle of microscopic organisms with growing concern. They were buying time, but not enough. "We need more chaos," she realized. "Not just biological, but quantum." She turned to the Zentari. "Can you introduce quantum uncertainty into the prototype's reproductive cycle?" The crystalline nodes pulsed with calculation. Theoretically possible, but highly dangerous. The results would be completely unpredictable. "Exactly what we need," Maya insisted. "Kirax, can you reconfigure the containment fields to accommodate quantum fluctuations?" The Velexi scientist hesitated only briefly before moving to the controls. In all their centuries of advancement, they had worked to eliminate uncertainty from their systems. Now they were deliberately introducing it. The next hours were a blur of activity as they modified their approach. The Zentari introduced quantum randomness into the prototype's basic functions. The Relax contributed photosynthetic elements that responded to light in unpredictable ways. Even the Velexi found ancient genetic sequences that retained traces of their species' original chaos. Maya coordinated it all, guiding the integration of these disparate elements into something that had never existed before, a biological system that embraced randomness as its core feature. "New report from the outer colonies," a communications officer announced. "The plague has adapted again. It's beginning to affect non-engineered biological systems." The news hit the laboratory like a physical blow. If the plague could now target natural biology, no living thing in the sector was safe. "How long until the new prototype is ready?" Kirax asked, her form flickering with barely contained anxiety. Maya checked the integration progress. 20 minutes for basic synthesis. "But Kirax, we can't test this version. We'll have to deploy it immediately." "Without testing, the risks are less than the certainty of what happens if we wait," Maya finished. She looked around the laboratory at the assembled beings from across the galaxy, each representing billions of lives at risk. "We've engineered chaos itself. Testing would only make it more predictable." One by one, the scientists nodded. They had come too far to let pride or caution stop them now. Maya initiated the final synthesis sequence, watching as their creation took its final form. Outside, through the laboratory's windows, the darkened city stood as a reminder of what they were fighting for. But Maya saw something else in those dead buildings, the price of perfection, and the lesson it had taught them all. As the synthesis countdown reached its final minutes, she caught Kirax's eye. The Velexi scientists' crystalline form had developed new patterns over their time working together, less symmetric, less perfect, but somehow more alive. "Whatever happens," Kirax said softly, "you've shown us a new way forward. Not through perfection, but through embracing the very chaos we sought to eliminate." Maya nodded, watching the final seconds tick away. They had created something unprecedented. A cure born not from advanced engineering, but from the primitive chaos that all life emerged from. Now they would see if that ancient wisdom was enough to save the future. Evolution. The cure spread through the sector like wildfire, chaotic, unpredictable, and unstoppable. Maya watched through the Velexi capital's observation dome as sections of the city slowly rekindled, biological systems awakening with new patterns that defied conventional engineering. "Remarkable," the Zentari collective observed, their nodes pulsing with fascination. "The systems aren't just recovering, they're evolving." The cure they'd created didn't simply fight the plague. It transformed everything it touched. Velexi biotechnology, once perfectly ordered, now incorporated elements of randomness and adaptation. The crystalline buildings pulsed with new colors, their patterns never repeating exactly the same way twice. 97% of infected systems have shown positive response. Karax reported, her own form shimmering with previously impossible combinations of patterns. The plague can't establish a foothold in the transformed networks. But not everyone celebrated their success. A group of Velexi traditionalists, led by several former High Council members, had barricaded themselves in the last untouched section of the city. They refused to accept a cure that would forever alter their definition of perfection. Maya stood before the sealed doors of their enclave, Kirax at her side. "The plague will reach you eventually," she called out. "You can't maintain perfect isolation forever." "Better extinction than corruption," came the response. "We will not sacrifice our purity for survival." Purity. Kirax stepped forward, her form deliberately shifting through chaotic patterns. "Look at what our pursuit of purity cost us. Look at what we gained by embracing change." The transformed city stood as testament to her words. Where once stood monuments to engineered perfection, now grew something new, a fusion of order and chaos, strength through adaptation rather than control. One by one, other species across the sector reported similar transformations. The Zentary's quantum networks evolved organic randomness. Krelak's ships developed new forms of photosynthesis that drew energy from previously unusable wavelengths. Even Earth's relatively primitive technology began incorporating elements of controlled chaos, leading to breakthroughs that would have been impossible under rigid engineering principles. The plague's creators made one crucial mistake, Maya explained to the assembled Galactic Council weeks later. They assumed that targeting perfection would destroy us. Instead, they forced us to remember that imperfection, adaptation, randomness, chaos, is the source of all evolution. The traditionalists eventually emerged from their enclave, forced out by failing systems. They found a changed galaxy waiting for them, one where humanity's primitive biology had sparked a revolution in how species viewed progress itself. Maya stood in her laboratory one final time, preparing to return to Earth. The room had changed, its once sterile surfaces now alive with subtle patterns. Kirax entered, their friendship having evolved as much as their respective civilizations. "The Velexi Academy of Sciences has a proposition for you," Kirax said. "We're establishing a new division dedicated to studying evolutionary adaptation. We'd like you to lead it." Maya smiled. A human leading a Velexi scientific division. A year ago, that would have been unthinkable. A year ago, we thought we knew everything worth knowing. Kirax's form shifted to display a pattern Maya had come to recognize as humor. "Now we understand that knowledge without growth is just another form of stagnation." Through the window, the transformed city sparkled with ever-changing lights. The plague that was meant to destroy them had instead forced them to transcend their limitations, to embrace the very chaos they had spent millennia trying to engineer away. "What do you think the plague's creators would think?" Maya wondered, "if they could see how their weapon transformed us." "They thought they were exploiting our greatest weakness," Kirax replied. "Instead, they revealed our greatest potential. In trying to destroy perfection, they taught us to embrace imperfection and made us stronger than we ever thought possible." Maya gathered her few belongings, including samples of the transformed biological systems for Earth scientists to study. Humanity's primitive approach had not only saved the sector but revolutionized how advanced civilizations viewed progress itself. As her ship broke orbit, Maya watched the Velexi homeworld recede, a world no longer striving for perfection, but alive with the beautiful chaos of constant evolution. The galaxy had learned a crucial lesson. True strength lies not in achieving perfection, but in never-ending adaptation. The plague's creators had sought to exploit pride and the pursuit of perfection. Instead, they had sparked an evolution that would reshape the galaxy's future, all because a primitive species remembered what the advanced ones had forgotten. That life itself began in chaos, and in chaos lay the seeds of infinite possibility.